Hello and welcome to the August edition of the EMEA Telos Monthly Update. I'm Hazel Burton. So each month we explore a topic that is top of mind in the threat landscape. And today we're going to be talking about multi-factor authentication, or MFA, and how cybercriminals are attempting new ways to try and bypass it. We're also going to be giving you insights and advice on the best ways to manage MFA for your organization in order to make life much harder for the bad guys and in turn better protect your data and your people from these attacks. So with me today, I'm joined as always by Martin Lee, EMEA's lead for Talos Strategic Planning and Communications. How's it going today, Martin?
It's going rather well, although it is ever so slightly warm here in Oxford today.
Oh, you should come up north. Nice and cool here. And we have a guest with us today. We invited a friend from Canada to join us as someone who is very knowledgeable about managing MFA and it just so happens to be one of the Cisco Secure Advisory CISOs. So Dave Lewis, welcome to our discussion. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
You are enormously welcome. So Dave, let's start with you. So to set some context, what would you say are some of the key reasons behind why MFA has become such a key security tool?
It's become a key security tool, much because people have really woken up to the reality that a password is akin to a house key. I use that analogy over and over again because it really is salient to the discussion. It does nothing to prove who it is that's accessing a website, as an example. It just means that that person has that particular key on their keychain. And we need to be able to do better. And tools like multi-factor authentication or passwordless really do avail us the opportunity to have that better level of understanding as to who it is that's actually coming through the front door, so that we do not have people doing things that they really shouldn't be, or at least reducing the risk significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you say, it's become really, really key as part of the security portfolio. But as the saying goes, sometimes we just can't have nice things because cyber criminals will try and ruin them. So Martin, can we explore some of the efforts and the techniques by which the bad guys are looking to try and bypass MFA?
Sure. I think the first thing to underline is that MFA solution is 100% better than not having an MFA solution. And also not all MFA solutions are identical. So, look at what it is that you have and what it is that you implement, but having anything is better than nothing, because passwords and usernames have never been a particularly good way of securing users or securing access to systems. There's a whole world of different levels that you can attack these things. Although an MFA solution will protect you if somebody steals your username and password, perhaps through a phishing attack, and they then use that or the attacker uses those stolen credentials to access a system. The idea is they can't do it because it sends a ping through to the user, and the user will look at this and think, well, I'm not accessing anything. That's the idea. However, the attacker could try and access the system, ping comes through to the user, and the user says, oh, yeah, okay, without actually clicking the no, it's not me trying to access this. They're like, oh, I don't remember accessing that. Maybe I am, or maybe something's happening, and they will click okay. That happens. The other big risk that we have with people is doing phishing in a slightly more sophisticated way, that if the user thinks that they're accessing a system, but in fact they're actually disclosing their username and password to an attacker who is then immediately trying to access that system. The user will get a legitimate ping back to their MFA solution saying, yeah, are you trying to access that? And as far as the user is concerned, they are. What they're not aware of is that there's a man in the middle attack where items, where those credentials are being intercepted. So the user is actually interfacing and accessing via a malicious website, which is capturing those usernames and passwords, accessing the system, but the user doesn't know that. So we get a genuine ping through, but actually it's an attacker trying to access something. So those are the two ways that a person can be fooled. However, I think we also have to recognize MFA solution, there's still software in there. And anytime that you have software, there are going to be vulnerabilities. So potentially, there is always the risk that you're going to have a software vulnerability, or you're going to misimplement the solution, so that the attacker will be able to find ways around it through subverting your own configuration or implementation of the solution, or potentially finding a software vulnerability. Another way that you can do this, 2011, the RSA hack, when attackers hacked into a widely known provider of two-factor authentication systems and actually stole the cryptographic secrets that generated the secret number that you had to log in. And knowing those secrets and how the that token that was generating the magic number was working, they were then reportedly able to use that stolen technology in order to access systems which they weren't supposed to. So much better than nothing, not 100% perfect.
Dave, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Well, no, he's absolutely spot on. And the reason the attackers are doing these sort of attacks and going after multi-factor authentication is something we have to be really cognizant of, is that a lot of times people are, accepting the prompts that they get on their phone out of muscle memory, or SMS messages is another way that people use for multi-factor authentication for a lot of systems. But it's a horribly broken way of doing things. It's still better than nothing, but organizations really have to take a step back and say, how can we do better? And having like push-based technology or passwordless is a great way to help obviate those potential risks, because the attackers are going after that knowing full well that at some point somebody will click something wrong. And we have to really make sure that we are doing things in a way that's not only going to make it more secure, but democratizing it for users in a way that is going to be easy for them to use, because most people that are using multi-factor authentication are not, by and large, technically adroit. They're very good at what they're good at, be it finance, whatever it happens to be. And we want to make sure that we are not making things more difficult. On the same token, we have to make sure that we're giving them proper training so they understand what to look for. And for example, you'll see attackers will be, sending SMS messages over and over again, or call in prompts over and over again. And the user might just go, fine, accept it, hoping for the best that it'll go away. And this is where security awareness training is absolutely fundamental, because you want to make sure that you're enabling users to be part of the solution. And we want to make sure we're steering away from vilifying users, because that actually accomplishes absolutely nothing. And the attackers are now looking for these new and exciting ways to go after these implementations that may not be, fully up to snuff because of that. And we want to make sure that we're getting along to the point where we're using push-based technology as a better way to do it, because that obviates a lot of these types of attacks. And we want to make sure that, the organizations are giving devices to their staff that have their trusted endpoint. And we want to look at stuff like WebAuthn keys as well for passwordless, because that's a better way to do authentication, much more difficult for an attacker to cause trouble. And further to that, we want to talk about better communication to staff so they understand what to do in the event that they have to deal with a prompt bombing. And we want to make sure organizations are looking at ways that they're going to do better implementations, and we want to make sure they're getting away from SMS. Yes, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but definitely having a path to getting to a better point of helping to secure the organization is absolutely key.
I think one thing which is really important to consider, again, I always like to think about things from the bad guy's point of view. Putting in an MFA solution, yes, it makes things easier for the users. It also makes things more difficult for the bad guys. So we're raising the barriers of entry that those less sophisticated attackers can't get by. It's another hurdle that they have to overcome. So we're making life more difficult for the bad guys. We're never going to make it impossible. We're making it more difficult so that less sophisticated attackers just cannot get started. The other bit, and I come back and I say it time and time again, sticky fingerprints at the site of the scene of the crime. Having to overcome the MFA leaves traces, and the security teams can pick up those traces because someone has to respond to that ping, or someone has to enter in those magic numbers to gain access. That leaves you traces, and if you've got those traces within the data, your security operations team can pick up on it, or if they get another alert of something has gone on, they can wind their way back through the logs to identify where the attack has come from, and then they can take action.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. So maybe just to end, maybe we could just do a quick summary. Maybe someone is watching, maybe their organization has been seeing some of the attacks that we've been describing. So phishing or prompt bombing, and they're concerned. What are some of the top things that they can do tomorrow and set plans in place for that will make their organization and their people more secure? Dave, maybe we can start with you.
First and foremost, move away from static usernames and passwords. This is definitely the bread and butter for a lot of these attackers, and we don't want to make their job any easier than it is. If you can move to push-based multi-factor authentication or passwordless if you're feeling froggy, these are ways to help reduce the risk in your organization. And it doesn't have to be something you apply to simply one or two applications. You can do it for your entire environment, and you will definitely be in a much better place from a security perspective.
Great. Martin, any top things, any top tips from you?
I'd say simplify the whole user experience so it's really easy for end users to authenticate themselves, do it in one place, so you're also giving that visibility and control to the security teams so that they are able to pick up when things are going wrong, or when a user is under attack, or potentially where there's been a man-in-the-middle attack. And then if you're centralizing the user identity and you've got a user who's been compromised and has somehow the MFA system has been bypassed, you can then lock that user so that they can't engage in any more systems, and with that you're kicking out the bad guys. And then you're going to have to get on the phone to that user, make sure it's the real person, get them to reset their credentials. But if you're centralizing everything, you're making it easier for the end user, and you're also giving control to the security team so they can pick up the attacks early, take action, remediate it, stop harm happening.
Great. Thank you very much. And that is all we've got time for today. To stay up to date with what is going on in the threat landscape, please do subscribe to the Talos blog. That is blog.talosintelligence.com. Thank you to Martin and to our guest, Dave, for joining us. And we will see you at the next monthly update. Take care.